Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alex Hagan, and I'll be your moderator today. Today we're going to be looking at some innovative tips for selling in a virtual landscape. We're thrilled to have two sales leaders here to share their expertise. Before we get started, there are a couple housekeeping items I'd like to review. First, this session is being recorded. We'll provide a link to each of you to review or share with your colleagues within the next 2 business days. We also want this session to be as interactive as possible, so we set some time aside for some Q&A at the end. Feel free to type in any questions that you have in the Q&A box throughout this webinar, and we'll address them at the end. First, let's set the stage a bit and discuss the current sales landscape. Today, sales teams are struggling to meet their numbers. This time last year, a Join Me study showed that only 58% of sales professionals made their quota for 2014. And HubSpot recently predicted that over 1/3 of sales reps will miss their 2016 quota. So this market is really a challenging one. Sales is also becoming increasingly fast-paced with on-the-fly prospect demos and meetings happening all the time. According to our data, over 1/3 of sales professionals report that unplanned ad hoc meetings with external parties are increasing. And for the prospect or buyer, there's so much noise in the market that they stop listening. A recent article in TechCrunch stated that only 1/4 of all sales emails are opened, and it takes between 8 and 12 phone calls to connect with a buyer. Sales teams need to rethink their strategies to gain prospects' attention, and virtual tools are where many of them are turning. So to help you navigate through some of the challenges of this landscape, we have 2 experts from top software companies to talk about their unique experiences and best practices. Joining us today is our resident expert, Michelle Benfer. Michelle is our Vice President of New Business Sales at LogMeIn. LogMeIn's cloud-based solutions make it possible for anyone and companies across the globe to connect and engage with their workplace, colleagues, customers, and products everywhere, anytime. Michelle's 7 years of experience includes managing both field and inside teams in the media and technology industries. And we're also thrilled to have Johnny Vance join us, who's the North America Area Director for Meltwater, the global leader in media intelligence solutions. Johnny has over 7 years of experience in SaaS sales and management across 5 different countries. Aside from being a fast-growing global powerhouse, Meltwater is also a happy Join Me user. Sales teams across the globe, including Johnny's, use Join Me for instant prospect demos of their media intelligence platform. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate you having us here. So to kick things off, before we get into some of the content that Michelle and I have prepared, would like to get a feel for exactly who it is that we're talking with. So just an audience poll to kick things off. What I would like everyone to be able to vote on here is what percentage of your prospect interactions are virtual. And by virtual, we obviously mean not done in person. So if everybody could take some time now just to click on one of those 4 options, so either less than 25%, 25 to 50%, 50 to 75%, and then more than 75% for the 4th option there.
And Johnny, what about at Meltwater? How many of your interactions with your clients today are virtual, and how many are you actually doing that are face-to-face?
From a new business perspective, it's around about 95% virtual, I would say. We have clients and prospects all over North America, but it's not always so easy to get out and meet those companies in Alaska, even though we have 13 offices in North America. So the vast majority of our interactions are done virtually using a tool like Join Me. Okay, so has everyone voted there? Okay, so doesn't really strike me as being overly surprising that the vast majority of people here are using virtual or have virtual interactions more than half the time, with 56% there coming in at 75% or more. So given the nature of the audience of this webinar, I'm not surprised. I'm sure there are a lot of Join Me customers on the line here. But to go through the agenda, what we're going to cover over the course of the next 30 minutes or so is some tips and some best practices on a few different items. Now, because most people here are actively engaging in virtual selling by looking at that poll, this may already provide some interesting or some information that you're aware of, but there will also be some tips at the end that Michelle will share, which will give you some more insight and hopefully give you some takeaways that will be very tangible for yourself and your colleagues as you try and close out 2015. So first, we're going to talk about arming the internal champion. Then going on to improving efficiency and shortening the sales cycle. We'll talk about effective virtual communication, some different methods and techniques that we can make sure we're maintaining that connection with our prospects and clients. And then more for people who may be in sales manager positions on this call, we'll talk about managing a sales team in a virtual world and how different tools can help not just sell to prospects, but also work as part of a team. And then some specific tips on using join.me in your sales cycle. So to kick it straight off, when we talk about arming your internal champion, every salesperson knows that in an ideal world, in a perfect situation, you'll be talking to the decision maker from the get-go. But unfortunately, that is easier said than done in some instances. And what we really need is to be able to arm this internal champion, someone who isn't necessarily going to be the person signing off on your contract or maybe even making that final decision, but someone who may have to be your representative in a boardroom or in a team meeting that you are unfortunately not invited to. So for that purpose, it's really important that you have someone there who is going to be able to fight your battle for you and to sell into the organization when you cannot. So what are some different ways that we can go about this? Well, firstly, it's really important to give people the tools that they need so that they can have that conversation on your behalf. So anything that you would typically share in a product demonstration or anything that you feel would help your case, that's the sort of collateral that we need to be sharing with this internal champion. So whether that's industry trends, data points, different white papers that may provide value, that could be one approach. I know something that we really focus on at Meltwater is coming up with collateral that's easy to pass along and very easy to share among the organisation, and is also something that's quite visual. We know that a lot of our clients are visual learners. We're speaking with people in public relations, communications and marketing departments. Generally there is a creative flair in there. So anything that we can provide that actually gives tangible value in a visual form to a prospect is something that we find is most successful. Michelle, how is that at join.me?
Yeah, similar, I'd say, on this end here. So, first, one of the things that we try to do is customize the way that our prospects like to receive information. So, to start, asking your point of contact how they would best consume information can really help. So, personally, I get a ton of emails that I never open, but when I receive something that's easily digestible for me, like a video link, I'm certainly more apt to consume it. So asking your point of contact how they best consume information, and of course how the internal decision maker would like to receive collateral certainly helps you get your message across in a way that complements their consumption style. Obviously this can be a video, PowerPoint, email, but what's the best way for them to digest the information so that you can make sure that the internal champion as well as any of the internal stakeholders and decision makers are going to get information that they're going to be able to digest that works well for them in their busy schedules. Second, you mentioned 65% of people consider themselves visual learners. I consider myself one of those as well. So for many, having visuals early in the sales process, and I think this part's important, making sure that it's as early as possible, really helps prospects understand what you're offering and can help separate you from some of your competitors. So this is where join.me really helps, especially for that ad hoc on-the-fly meeting early in the sales process. And that certainly can just help your prospect understand your product, your offering as soon as possible so that you guys are starting off on the right foot. Lastly, I would just share that once you've gotten to the stage where you are having more formal scheduled meetings with your prospects, Sending a recap of the meeting, especially if you have joined me through a recorded demo, is a great asset and piece of collateral for them to share internally with some of those stakeholders as well. So that's a great feature, and especially for anyone who wasn't able to attend a meeting, to be able to share that demo and quell any objections or questions certainly helps on this end.
I agree with all of those points, and I think making sure that in this initial meeting that we have with someone who may be lower down the chain and is going to need to be your internal champion, to try and spitball some ideas with them as to potential objections that they may have to overcome when they're presenting your case for you to their higher-ups or to their team. Making sure that they know not just what you have discussed, but they also know the answers to those questions. And I think that if you've given a high-quality product demonstration, and this is someone who knows their team well, they will be able to anticipate the sorts of questions that they might be asked. And if you've proved value to this person, then they're more likely to open up and to go ahead and to kind of share some of those potential concerns with you. So the recap of a demo recording is also something which is obviously able to be shared then with that person's colleagues. But to this last point, I mean, salespeople by our nature, we're a tenacious beast, and I think that it's important not to just give up because you've not been able to get to the decision maker first time around. That could be a natural defense mechanism where someone hasn't necessarily wanted to introduce you to their boss. But if you have done the right work and if you have proved value to that person, it's definitely worth asking again and repeating and following up that we would like to speak with the decision maker. And the more value that you have proved to this first point of contact, the more likely that you are to actually get passed through. So even if you've been rebuffed in the past, I would definitely recommend making sure that we are still trying to get in touch with that decision maker. So that moves us on to our next point, which is around finding efficiencies and shortening the sales cycle. So this is something in a virtual world with so many services and so many products out there that is incredibly important and is becoming increasingly important. And the first thing here, we need to talk about qualifying, or in many instances, disqualifying the opportunities. So one of the most important things that we share with our reps at Meltwater, and I'd be interested to hear if it's the same way here, Michelle, is really how to qualify a prospect. Trying to get beyond what we call the oohs and ahs in terms of just a cursory affirmation that they like the way that something looks or they think it's a cool tool, as to actually getting to those people who are legitimate buyers, who are asking the right sorts of questions that aren't just, this looks good, I could see how I use this, but allows you to see that in their mindset, they are already considering themselves as a customer. And there are a lot of different ways that we can go about this, and every organisation is going to be different, but it's really important to pinpoint the sorts of things that differentiate a qualified lead from one which is perhaps not as interested, and whether that's down to different things such as email tracking or certain questions that we need answered. I think it's very important for organisations to be able to identify what that is within their own sales cycle. Michelle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, here at LogMeIn, we focus a lot on actually disqualifying. So, the more that you can put up really strong criteria for someone to actually get into your funnel, you want to be disqualifying more people than you're qualifying, purely because the reality is we know that it's a smaller conversion rate of people who are going to actually close. So one of the things we look for when we're talking to our reps and we're working on deals are, well, what's the risk? Why wouldn't they buy? What are the things that are going to hold them back from moving forward? So disqualifying during the sales process is often just as important, if not more important than qualifying, because it's those that you will eventually disqualify that are going to take up so much of your time and aren't going to provide you what you really want, which is obviously a signed contract from that potential prospect.
And I would argue that in an instance where you have a lot of inbound leads coming in as well, and you have a lot of marketing source leads, that disqualifying is going to be the thing that you need to spend more time on, because perhaps it's not something that you've built from the ground up, and you know that it's definitely going to be something of interest with that person, perhaps because you've had previous conversations. So definitely an important thing not to just gloss over. So the second point here is to really gain mutual respect from the customer and to be very upfront on timelines. So we like to train all of our sales reps to go in at the same level as the person that they're trying to sell to, as opposed to talking up to someone, even if they are in a very senior position. And it's important that as a professional, they're taking you as seriously as you are taking them. And in terms of follow-ups, next steps, very tangible takeaways and action points, this is something which, if we're providing value and if we are doing what we say we will do at the recap of a call, be that sending across a recorded demo, sending across an agreed upon sample or so on, then it's only fair that your prospects pay you the same sort of courtesy in return and do what they say they're going to do on their end, which is more often than not talk to a team, look into budgets and those sorts of things that a prospect will say they have to do. When it comes to the demo itself, it's really down to what sells your product best, and knowing that and knowing what demos well with the tools or the services that you're offering. And this is interesting. From speaking to Michelle, Meltwater and LogMeIn approach this quite differently. So for Meltwater, we have a very, very intelligent platform that has a lot of bells and whistles. So what we like to do is a demo where we are in control. We will show someone a tailored account for their company, but we like to steer the ship, and we like to be able to go through things a certain way, because we understand that if we were to just let a prospect loose in our tool without any real explanation, perhaps they would get lost and blame that on the tool as opposed to what we would probably deem as user error. But I understand that's something that's quite different with join.me, just by the nature of that tool. So Michelle, did you want to elaborate on that part of your methodology?
Yeah, so I think, playing to our strengths at join.me, one of our biggest selling points is how easy the product is to use right from the start. So we pass control of the join.me meeting in the demo fairly quickly to allow our prospects to experience that simplicity. So if you are listening and you are selling a web-based or SaaS product that's fairly intuitive, giving your customer the controls to play around is a great way to get them engaged earlier, and allows them to share any hesitations or concerns earlier in the sales cycle, which of course helps with that disqualifying, qualifying, allowing you to overcome some of those objections early. And join.me's presenter swap feature or share mouse control feature really help in allowing your customer to be engaged or your prospect to be engaged earlier in the sales cycle. And Johnny, like you at Meltwater, we place a big emphasis here on being upfront with customers and having that mutual respect and laying down the groundwork for what working with us will be like. So we try to mirror the experience our product provides our users through our customers' buying experience, making it simple, easy, and intuitive in the buying process. So we focus on closing every call with a recap of the meeting and action items for both parties, a scheduled next call, also referred to as a firm future commitment, along with a timeline of events to come. So for example, asking the prospect, what needs to happen on your end between now and the next meeting? And sending that by an emailed recap helps you and your customer have mutually agreed upon takeaways and next steps for you both to reference easily. One of the things that we like to do at the start of a meeting is letting the prospect know that the last 5 minutes of the call, you're going to leave to recap everything that you've discussed. And a great little tip is during those last 5 minutes, allowing your prospect to actually see the notes through join.me as you're typing them, which not only shortens the sales cycle, as you guys are both agreeing what the takeaways are from the call, but you can send that email recap right away as soon as that call ends, so that your customer, your prospect, they're prepped, they're ready to go, and it also establishes transparency and differentiates you as a partner who's efficient and timely. So, that's one of the ways that we play to our strengths. Obviously, we're using our tool, but it also helps us create a buying experience for our customers that's easy and efficient, and helps move that sales cycle along faster.
Okay, great. Well, I think that the core idea is the same there, even if it's perhaps a little bit different just with our two products. And the final point on this slide, using the selling tools and data to your advantage, we've spoken a little bit about collateral that you can pass on that is easy to share and easy to digest. But then there are also a lot of different things that we can do here. And some of those selling tools could be the pre-recorded demos. They could be white papers and so on. For us, we like to create a tailored sample specific to the client that we've just spoken with. If we're trying to pitch a newsletter tool, for example, which is one of our features, we'll create that custom template and just show how simple it is. But then what I think is also important is to be able to use data to your advantage as well. So there's so much technology out there that's designed to assist salespeople right now, from email tracking to link tracking and the ability to see who's opening your presentations, what pages they are on, and so on. And I think that if we're not using some of those tools, many of which are freely available online, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. And being able to critically analyze your own sales cycle and to try and pick out maybe where that kink in the hose is will help you refine your own methodology in terms of the part of that sales process which is perhaps not optimized. If people aren't reading your emails, if people aren't responding to different proposals, if people are blowing off your calls, there's going to be very different root causes for all of those. And in today's environment where there are different things that are available to help sales professionals, it's really worth spending the time getting out there and trying to see if some of those tools can help you as well.
Yes, well, speaking of those tools and trying to make sure that you're connecting with your prospects as efficiently as possible, that brings us to our next topic, which is how to maintain a human connection in a virtual world. So one of the hardest things in a world where we communicate today, and I think everyone can probably agree to this, is there's so many methods of connecting, whether it's text message, email, IM, countless other ways that you can maintain meaningful human connection with prospects in your team. And today we have more tools than ever to improve that connection and to get work done faster. So you want to make sure that you have the tools at your disposal to make the interaction as close to real life as possible and to make it memorable. How do you set yourself up as different compared to some of the other reps that might be pitching your same prospect? That might mean seeing your client face-to-face with video. For some of you, that might be new. Join.me launched our video feature this year, and we've had to adjust our internal selling style and how we communicate with our customers, as video sales calls still aren't the norm for a lot of buyers. It certainly wasn't for our reps here. So taking some time out to say to your prospect, usually we give you a brief product overview to see if it might make sense for us to discuss further, and if so, we will schedule a more in-depth video meeting to meet you, fully understand your needs, and how we might be a solution for your business. It's all about that mutual agreement we talked about, that upfront contract, and letting prospects know what to expect from the get-go. So that's one of the ways that we've been able to incorporate that. Recently, we hosted a sales webinar with sales expert and author Jill Conrath. She shared with us that prospects today are used to bite-sized ad hoc online meetings. So if you're not doing this today, this might be something that you want to start incorporating into your selling style. And for many of you, for the 25%, who aren't using virtual meetings all of the time, this might be an adjustment that you want to make in the way that you are interacting with your prospects today. It's in these bite-sized meetings where a lot of prospects decide whether or not they actually want to give you their time and if it's going to be worth their effort. So introducing yourself via video and letting them know that you're a real person helps separate you from some of the more traditional sellers and establishes that face-to-face connection earlier, where you're able to read some of their visual cues. Johnny, you were mentioning that at Meltwater, you use video for a different reason, not as much in the beginning of a sales cycle, but more towards, with your current established customers. Is that correct?
Yeah. So with our current clients, I can give an example of our Chicago office. So for our Chicago office, we actually care for clients in 17 states throughout the Midwest. And we do our best to get out and to visit with those customers as often as that is feasible. However, what we like to do for those customers that we can't necessarily just walk across to their office building is to introduce them to their client success team via video from that onboarding call. So we have an automated, regimented onboarding process that we go through with every single customer that we bring on, and we like to make sure that they know that there is a human that they can answer their questions and is going to help them optimize their subscription from day one. And then just being able to, when we are having conversations with those customers as well throughout their subscription, especially if we haven't been able to visit them for a while, to make sure that we can share exactly what we're doing over video and to try and get that face-to-face connection and hopefully build some rapport and to make sure that the relationship is a lot more than just company to company, but much more person to person, which is obviously what we're aiming for when it comes to retaining those clients.
Great. So expanding on video, whiteboarding, visual whiteboarding virtually is another great medium for you to take what would traditionally occur in a conference room if you were sitting down with a prospect or even if you were in a team meeting. So what would traditionally occur in a conference room, you can take that online. So, I love if I'm talking to a customer or a prospect to actually illustrate a point. And a virtual whiteboard like join.me, which you can use on either iPhone or iPad, allows your prospect to actually visualize what you're thinking and make your point more clear. So with those visual learners out there, you can drive your point home by showing them what you're thinking. And I can tell you personally, when I'm in working from home sometimes and we have whiteboards that are going on at a HQ meeting, and I can't actually see what people are talking about, it's so much easier once we've been able to bring the whiteboard to the call. So that's a great way for you to be working with your prospect to give them just another viewpoint of one of the points that you're trying to get across. And for the last point here, Johnny, I know that you're managing reps and teams in other offices and meeting with customers as well. How do you keep those multiple party meetings engaging?
I mean, using video is a great way to be able to do that because you can kind of read the reactions of people. You can get a good sense as to when you're losing people and maybe if you need to shake up that script a little bit to get things back on track. But also being able to, I suppose, hold people accountable to actually pay attention by being able to manage those meetings with multiple presenters, to share the presenter controls, to make sure that you're giving each person in that meeting a chance to be actively engaged so that they can't just zone out and scroll through emails on their phone. I think that's a really good way to do it as well. And it's something which is quite empowering that Michelle will touch on a later slide, is the ability that they can, your prospect can essentially get their hands dirty with your product while you are there guiding them through that. That's something that we do all the time, and we find that if we've had a good product demo where the client has actually, or the prospect has actually had the controls, then the conversion rates for those sorts of things are much higher.
Great. And so this last point here, stating your goals up front, this kind of goes back to, one, that mutual respect for the customer, but two, I think especially with online meetings and conducting virtual relationships with your customers, the more that you can have clear agendas, getting action items at the end of the meeting and clear next steps is what's going to make one of the most efficient processes possible for you and for your prospect to make sure that you are having the most effective communication, and you want to make sure that you're setting yourself apart from some of the competitors in the market. So that brings us to our final topic, and this is specifically for any of the sales managers who might be on the call or any sales leaders. Managing a sales team in a virtual world. So here at LogMeIn, we have some people who work from home full-time or part-time or just every now and then. And many organizations who look to attract top talent understand that work from home flexibility is becoming more and more common. Thankfully, we can collaborate just as effectively if everyone was in the same room with the right collaboration and sales management practices. So here are a few that we've discussed that we think are actually pretty important. One is, making sure you're improving that work-life balance and creating a sales team and a culture where people have flexibility in their lives, and having these virtual collaboration tools really helps with that. So here, having your team as individuals work from home a day or two a month can really help. I love it specifically because it gets people, especially inside sales reps, out of their day-to-day. It gets them home, it gets them out of a little bit of a different process in the way that they might work. And personally, I get some of my best thinking done when I don't have the buzz of the office around every single day. So that's a nice, just changing it up a bit tip. Another one is hosting your one-on-ones virtually. So we have some reps that live in other states or in outside offices. So our only choice is to actually have our one-on-ones, through an online meeting. And this is great. This is an opportunity for us to take a look at rep stats. How's their activity doing? What's their pipeline look like? Maybe listening to a deal together. We might even have sales team meetings where we have some people from external offices who are on the call. And having the online meeting with everybody in the room, we have the opportunity to pass presenter and take a look at where different opportunities are in the pipeline and how would other people chime in and what move would they make. So having those one-on-ones, having your team work from home, and using the online tools to connect with them and establish that, consistent human connection certainly helps. Another one is improving the quality and activity with data insights. So, for us, we record all of our sales calls for the most part, as well as demos, and we use them as coaching opportunities. So, for any of you who do have Join Me out there, even if, it's not your manager who's doing it, recording the way that you do a demo can even just give you better insight into where you might be able to look at your own personal game and improve it. Johnny, how's your team using, some of these tips specifically?
I think recording demos for coaching purposes is incredibly beneficial, especially for newer reps. Sometimes, whether it's down to something like the tone of your voice or maybe a little tick that you've got that you don't even realize, nothing really makes that stand out like actually listening to the sound of your own voice. And I know that especially with newer reps, this really accelerates their learning style, and I'm a huge advocate for that. And it's also good to be able to almost empower people to critique themselves, because I find that if I'm listening to a call with someone and I stop and I say, what should you have done there? What comes out of their mouth in a meeting where it's just me and them is going to be the exact right thing. However, it's not what they've done on the call. So then it opens up another conversation and another discussion as to, okay, well, if you know the right answer yet you're doing this thing, what is the reason behind that? Is it a confidence issue? Is it that they're not comfortable, or they don't like being perceived as pushy, for example? So it's really important to be able to have these very, very tangible examples by way of recorded demos to be able to open up a whole number of different conversations with individual reps.
Yeah, and on this end, that kind of takes us into trainings. So here at LogMeIn, we use recorded trainings in order to give updates to what, we have a global sales team as well. So with offices in India and London and Dublin and Sydney, this is a way for us to connect with all of our offices and give immediate sales skills trainings, new product updates. And you can take some of your best reps and the type of demos and sales calls that they're having, and you can immediately send that recording to people across the globe so that they have better insight into how some of the best people are actually having sales calls. So whether it is just for that one-on-one coaching, it's for training updates, sales skills trainings, managing a virtual sales team and using online meetings and recording them certainly can be a major asset. So that gets us to our last and final portion of this webinar, which is some of the 5 ways you may have never thought to use Join Me, but might help you in your sales in your sales process. So number 1, give your prospect a visual and branded experience early. So Johnny discussed this with how important getting them the right collateral is, customizing it. With Join Me, one of the things that we love to talk to our prospects about is that you can actually brand the online meeting experience with a branded background, whether it's your company's background or you want to change it for your prospects so that when they join the Join Me, you have their company logo as a branded image. But giving your prospect that visual experience, that branded experience, whether it's through an ad hoc meeting early or through collateral, is a great opportunity, or personal URL is a great opportunity early on to make sure that, especially those visual learners, get to experience the most of what you're offering them. On the second point, send a recording of your demo for the internal champion to share. So first and foremost, I think Johnny and I would both agree, ideally you get that decision maker on the phone and you get them involved in the process early. But that being said, the reality of the internal champion often being the one who's going to disseminate information, you want to set them up for success. So whether that is through video collateral or recording your demo for them to share internally, it's a great other point that you may or may not be using today. For the third point, be transparent, literally, with your mutually agreed upon timeline. For any of you salespeople who are out there, for me, this is one of the most important points that we try to drive home here at LogMeIn and specifically on the Join Me sales team, is making sure that you have those next steps and that you and your prospect are agreeing on what you've discussed, what has to happen on their end between now and the next time you talk, what has to happen on your end and how you're going to deliver that, and what the timeline for the rest of the sales cycle possibly looks like. And this can actually start on when they think that they're going to be able to sign the contract and going back from there. But actually having your Join Me up, reserving that 5 minutes at the end of the meeting in order to put down those notes and then send them off to your prospect in an email is a great way to separate yourself as an efficient, organized, and detailed seller. Point 4, empower your sales teams to contribute by passing presenter. So many people use Join Me for that one-on-one experience, but this is also great for sales teams to collaborate, whether you're in the same office, and we come into conference rooms here at LogMeIn with everyone having a laptop, and we all use Join Me because it actually ends up being faster than using our projectors. But it's a great way for sales managers and for just members of sales teams to not only empower themselves as individuals, but empower the team to say, I'd love to share something. Past presenter, allow someone to take a turn, whether it's sharing an opportunity, a challenge that they're having in the sales cycle, but to get everybody involved and engaged, especially at a time like this where we're closing out the year. And then last but not least, 5, use Join Me video at all stages to maintain a human connection. Here at Join Me and LogMeIn, that's something that because we're demoing the Join Me product, we tend to bring video in earlier in the sales cycle to make sure that our prospects know that that's a great feature and one that they can use in many different facets of their use case. But as Johnny mentioned at Meltwater, this is something that they do in order to onboard a customer. This helps them with client retention and allows them to maintain that more human connection through all the stages of the sales cycle. And we wanted to include one bonus tip. So use Join Me in the field for backup. So for those of you who are still having face-to-face meetings in addition to your virtual meetings, and worst case scenario, if you are meeting with a prospect and you go to plug in your laptop and for whatever reason their projector isn't working or you can't get on their Wi-Fi potentially, using Join Me, whether it is through an iPhone or an iPad or a desktop, or a laptop, or pulling your laptop up and giving them your iPhone in order for them to follow along as you're giving a presentation is a great way for you to have the ability to share a presentation while you're still in the field for backup. So hopefully some of those tips and tricks are things that you may not be doing today, and they're going to help you close more deals more quickly.
Great. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Johnny. This has been really great. We've received a number of questions from the audience, and if you have any additional, please feel free to submit them now. I'm going to jump right into the Q&A. This question, I think, is for Michelle. It's from Matt, and he is wondering how you find out how do you find out how your internal champion likes to receive collateral. Do you just ask them, or is that something that you should know going into a call?
No, I would specifically ask them. So, what I would say in the sales process is, one, what's typically the best time to reach you? If I'm going to try to call you on the phone, is it in the mornings? Is it around lunchtime, afternoons? What's your busy time? What's not your busy time? So just kind of getting a feel for their schedule. Are you somebody who, is email best for you? Is phone best for you? What's your best way to communicate? And then from a consumption standpoint, saying we have video assets, we have collateral that you could share with your team. What do you think would be most effective? And with your decision maker, what do you think they'd be able to digest most quickly? So just coming out and asking the question, I think is certainly the way to go there.
Great, thanks. And another question from Bob. If you want to use video effectively, is there any additional hardware or environmental elements that you need to take into consideration when you have a prospect on the phone and potentially they can see your surroundings? I know both of you guys have had this experience, so I'm wondering if you have any tips or tricks for Bob on this.
Yeah, so for any of you, when we actually launched video, we did a great little commercial campaign that's on YouTube now. So if you have a chance, go and look at it. But it's that reality of when you're about to hop on a video call and you realize that your environment may not be prepped accordingly. And I've personally had that situation happen to me. So, Bob, I would recommend, one, you want to prep your prospect, and you just want to ask them, right? This is a new medium that not only you as a seller are getting used to, but your prospect is getting used to. So I would just say, hi, Mr. Prospect. I realize that I'm not sure if you might have video access, or camera access, but we like to meet our potential partners through a video call. Is that something that you'd be open to? And if so, I'd be happy to send you the details and how we can get on board. So, just coming out and ask them, the person might say, oh, actually, I don't have a camera, or I don't have a video, or no, that's not something I'm interested in, and that's okay. But I think being upfront with them as opposed to maybe asking them on the fly is probably a better situation. And if you are, using Join Me, you just want to make sure that they're joining via Google Chrome or that they have the desktop app downloaded. That way they're prepped and ready to go.
We have a couple questions, both from Catherine and Lisa, same types of questions. What are some sales technologies that you guys use? Specifically, Lisa is interested in any email tracking technologies that you guys use, and Catherine just has a broader question about sales technologies in general.
Yeah, Michelle and I were talking about this before the call, actually, just trying to get a sense of what one another has in place. And in terms of email tracking, I personally, I like Yesware. I think that it provides a lot of benefit, not just in terms of being able to track when and where an email has been opened, but also on what device. So if someone says, I need to send this through to my boss to be reviewed, and then you see it all of a sudden be opened up on an iPhone in a different city that you know that your contact isn't there, then there's a good chance that your contacts actually come good on what they said they were going to do, and it's forwarded on this information. However, if you don't get any notifications that that email has been opened and your contact says, yeah, I passed it on, we pretty much know that they're lying, and we know that this is not a qualified opportunity for us, something we shouldn't spend too much time on. It also tells you when people open attachments and down to how much time they spend on a particular page of a proposal or an attachment as well. So I find that to be really useful in terms of email tracking. Michelle, you were talking about some sales technologies that you've taken advantage of in the past. Do you want to elaborate on some of the better ones?
Yeah, sure. So we also do email tracking. We use Vision through InsideSales.com, so that's worked out well for us, similar to you guys. The other one, we have a meeting scheduling software that we've used just recently that's really helped. So this is where a prospect or a customer, you can send them an email, and all they have to do is click on a link. They can see your actual calendar and choose a slot that's open and available. This really cuts down that back and forth, like, does this time work for you? Does that time work for you? So that's really helped us shorten the sales cycle. Another one that we have is local presence. So this is when we actually dial out to a prospect or a customer, and the call comes from their area code. This has really helped our connect rates. So I'm not sure if some of you out there might be using some of that software, but that certainly worked for us. And recently, I'd say local presence, the email tracking, as well as the meeting scheduling software have been three that have certainly helped our sales cycle accelerate.
Great. Thanks, guys. Lisa actually just sent another question in. Could Johnny please repeat the name of the email tracking system?
Yeah, so there are a few out there. It's just, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to personal preference. The one that my team uses is Yesware, Yesware. So that's the one that just plugs straight into Gmail or Outlook.
Yep. And then we have another question for Michelle from Katie. Several times I've offered a proof of concept thinking that this is really going to seal the deal, but sometimes that backfires. How do you guys feel about proof of concepts? Advice on avoiding the slowdown?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, sometimes it's a reality proof of concept that you have to go through. So I think, the best way is, before you get to the proof of concept, kind of taking some of that control over in the sales cycle and making sure that you are qualifying or disqualifying ahead of time. So what can probably happen if you're going through proof of concept, and I think we've all had this, you get the happy ears, where it sounds like a buying signal, but it's really just another step and a way for them to potentially disqualify you as a partner or a vendor. So you want to do the same for them. You want to make sure, one of the things that we do here is what are they going to get out of the proof of concept? Are they looking at other competitors and doing the same thing for them? What are going to be the success metrics that they're getting out of the proof of concept? How are you going to measure them midway through the process? And I think being able to make sure you're setting up that timeline and asking as many disqualifying questions prior to the proof of concept as possible. If anything, it's just going to set you up for knowing more clearly where that deal is in the pipeline. And instead of you thinking that maybe it's a 60 to 70%, you might assume it's really more 40 to 50%. So it's still in your pipe. You're just not betting on it closing as much as you might be today.
It's also a good tool or a good time to be able to use that as leverage as well, and to make sure that if we go and we put this together and we essentially lay all of our cards out on the table, at that point, as Michelle said, what are they hoping to see from that? What are they hoping for it to do? And provided that it does that, I like to use the phrase positive hypotheticals with my team, where we always say, okay, so provided it does that, then what has to happen? Well, I have to go to finance. Okay, provided finance approve the spend, then what has to happen? And basically mapping out with your contact exactly what has to happen between this point in time and a signed contract being returned, with absolutely every step in between being sort of agreed upon or at least discussed with the contact that you're speaking with.
Two more follow-up questions on our technology question, both from Joe. Who do you guys use for local presence, and have you ever had a prospect get upset by using local presence?
Yeah, so we have Cisco phones that have these sidecars on them where everyone has 12 or 13 different area codes, which makes it quite easy, and we're able to track conversion rates and that sort of thing. There are also other softwares that are out there. A spoof card is one where you can actually determine exactly what phone number is going to show up when you call someone. And yes, sometimes this catches people off guard, and sometimes they're not always so pleased about that. More often than not, if it's a big issue, then we'll blame it on voice over IP and try and make out that we don't know how that happened. But more often than not, what we find, the people that get upset about this are not the legitimate buyers. They're people that have been avoiding you probably for a reason, and they're not going to buy your service anyway. This just gives them a very easy thing for them to blame it on. So in that instance, if someone's going to let this potentially scupper a partnership, that person probably wasn't going to buy in the first place.
Yeah, and for us, local presence, we also get through InsideSales.com. I haven't gotten any feedback that someone's been upset that we've called them from a local area code when we're based in Boston. I don't know if it necessarily registers for them right away. I think they probably register that they picked the phone up. But so far, we haven't gotten any feedback that it's upset anyone. But it has been very impactful in our overall connect rate. So that's certainly worked well for us.
Thanks, guys. I think we have time for one more question. This has come through from a couple different people, but probably more for Michelle. Can you speak to the differences between JoinMe and some other online meeting tools and how specifically I think Terry is thinking about WebEx and how they would be different in using them in the sales cycle?
Sure. I love this question. So I can say, the core difference, and I think probably for anyone who's on the line here, and Johnny had mentioned that this is how his team kind of came about using JoinMe as well, is it's really just one of the simplest, easiest, and intuitive tools that are out there. So, one of the biggest things about JoinMe is there are no downloads. So with your customer or your prospect, making it an easy experience for them is one that you certainly want. You want it to be seamless. And so the ease of use for JoinMe is, I'd say, one of the biggest differentiators. And then, of course, the personal URL. I mean, for any salesperson, for you to have basically your own customized personal meeting room for your customer to not only click on your link, to have the branded background for your business, for your product, that's a core differentiator. And then also, really, it's just the speed. I mean, JoinMe is just much faster. We've done studies on just how quickly it takes to get into a JoinMe meeting, not only for you, but really for your prospects. So for anyone who's considering JoinMe, you're looking at some of the other competitors out there. I think from a price differentiator, JoinMe typically is one to beat the rest. And then, it's ease of use, it's simplicity, and it's going to get you and your prospect and or your team in the meeting faster than any other tool out there, which at the end of the day is what we're trying to do, is get as many meetings as possible.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for everyone who joined us today. That's all the time we have. Please look for a follow-up email. We're going to be sharing the on-demand link for today's webinar. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on Twitter @JoinMe or on our feedback site at join.me/feedback. On behalf of the team at JoinMe, thanks for joining us.